The intro's playing.
You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first live episode 98 of Stakes in the Six. Boys, not only is it our first live episode, it's the first time we're
You're listening to the Stakes
I've been doing this for about 2 years.
Here are your
It is really.
co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex
Now, you know, the first
Hobson.
pandemic, Peter and I brought Alex on board and just doing this ever since. We're at 22 Front Street at Bottom Line in the Locker Room studio. Couldn't get a better way to start the season with the Leafs being on the Alex tonight.
You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Great to present the first episode. Brought to you by the Media Fieldhouse here in Toronto. 2 locations. We'll get to them in a little bit. But Alex, let's start off. How are you doing today?
Couldn't be doing better, man. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever
You're
done a
listening
podcast.
to the Stakes
Well, live
in
from the
the
bar now.
Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini,
Bottom line for
and
all of
Alex Hobson.
After doing a couple laps around this place, checking it out, background behind us, we got the front street right behind us there. It's amazing, man. They're really living up to the classic sports product.
You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
This year, season opener, season kicking off. I know it's going to be a very exciting one. This wide open thing that's happened last season was going to probably talk about. I was looking before, and I was looking forward to
The
everything.
Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts,
And,
Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Alex, I know you got a little something you want to start off the show.
Well, if you're a loyal follower of the 6 on 6 podcast, you know that last year I was snaking it.
You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
So I got it back here. I bought it maybe like 4 hours ago when I was on my way in here. I saved it for this very occasion. So I don't know. I feel like they are because I'm wondering because I feel like
You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
I'm gonna walk up. Yep, base card number 1, Jeremy Swayman. Yeah. Nice moving on the tonight. So, base card number 2, Mike Williams.
You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson. You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
We got some heavy stuff to do later in the show, but we're not going to kick it off that way because we got a lot to talk about going into the season. Obviously, Simmons, Zach Aston released, and all the over about.
You're listening to the Stakes in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
With that in mind, Alex, your thoughts on Simmons as a lead one, where was it?
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted it out the other day. It's just one of those things where you know it's the right thing, but it's still you know, I remember
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Fearless player, great power forward. Played, got to the net and banked the rebounds for a lot of his goals, which is exactly how I did when I was in the start. But it's gotten to a point where if you watch the game,
you're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Guy that you know, after years that if nothing else, you would want to see Wayne Simmons do something with this team in the playoffs. Obviously, he didn't win around either year, so that was unfortunate. But I just hope that he ends up on the.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Between what he did, what he did, really, Wayne Simmons was a guy that everyone kind of looked back fondly in terms of his tenure, and best of luck to him wherever he goes. That's basically what I'm
We had a little parting words for Steve Simmons.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
His first season in Toronto, but his first 6 games everyone went really well. And like Alex said, exactly was.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
He had it at certain points during the preseason. Maybe the first game, but afterwards, this kind of fell off. And unfortunately, the big leagues need to be competitive.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Wasn't that part of the practice that you would have wanted to do it from reps in? I'm assuming right now this is just them trying to he's going to be a four-ball runner. Unfortunately, he's just not a strong player.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
I mean, you look at the Leafs cap, and there's really room to fit in on the bench. And the Leafs are looking for depth. What's going to get them past that first round? Simmons.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
But with that, the Leafs did sign Zach Aston recently. That was kind of a given when he came on PTO. I mean, a lot of people knew that this was kind of a guy that.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Okay, they just said it. They were finding him in the agency is just going to work cap wise. And now that we know what the figure is, we got part of the team. And again, I'm not trying to like throw weights in the but people who bring one thing.
You're listening to the Sticks and the Six podcast. Here are your calls. Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Not only that, but I think go back to the job. I think I gave you this model. I didn't even realize he scored for that fucking And so underrated shot, no doubt. So the way that he provides something that's really important.
You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Alex, you've been on board with the Zach Aston Franks for some time as well. I mean, this is a guy that has kind of seen a bit of a journeyman over the first few years of his career, but a guy that
You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
I think that line and I'll make them bell for a good chunk of the season because they worked really well together, and the three of them might only combine for like 10 goals on the season, but they're going to be throwing hits. They're going to be on the forecast.
You're listening to
they're going to be
Sticks in the Six
so
podcast.
I think that's
Andrew Forbes, Peter
and
Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
started one of the supporters figured out that one of the games that made Aston Reese stick out to the Leafs was that 7-1 for Rocket Pittsburgh.
You're listening to
those kind of games are
the
further.
Six
So
podcast.
Aston Reese.
Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and
Well,
Alex
when one
Hobson.
player, and you can give all the arguments you want, or if they're after this, if they were responsible or whatever, but when one single player doubles the amount of hits that their team has, I think that's a good sign. And for a team that, recently for them for the past couple of years has been
You're listening to the
Yeah,
Sticks in
physicality,
the
they got
Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
kind of funny that we're talking about it and then getting forward but it seems like that's how he sort of like embodied his vision for the past couple of years. And if you do more of the same in Toronto, I think every fan will be happy.
You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
I'd say that was one of the worst players. So I think, sorry to rehash that. I think that as long as he can come out and play his game every night consistent with it, I think he's going to be fine.
You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
He had 8 goals and 17 points in just 43 games. So we divided Dutch and have that offensive upside. Doesn't bring it every night because he understands that his role is more on the physical side.
You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Leading into first round, hopefully the second round. We'll see how it goes.
Don't say the second round word right
I
now.
know.
We got 82 games to go before we can even start thinking about the second.
Well, it's good that you brought up the fact that he played with Crosby too. It shows the versatility and kind of like an Alexander Kerfoot situation where you have all these players right now that should immediately happen. You can rely on him to having that small that can kind of play relatively well in that top 6 role. So you have more players that can jump off and move up in the lineup. That's going to go very well.
Absolutely. Before we get to more cap talk, we never talked about this when it came out. The Leafs are sponsored by the Dairy Farmers of Montreal. The beautiful milk package will be sported on every Leaf jersey from here on out, at least for the next, I heard it's 8 years. And some big money involved as well.
As long as the packer base is that small, there's no other hats coming on.
Okay, so my question though to you is, we're all wearing jerseys that we bought that don't have a patch. What are your thoughts on the milk patch being on jerseys for fans to buy? And not just with the Leafs, but NHL and all.
On the topic of jersey ads, I think it's one of those things that every hockey fan at first glance, will have a negative opinion on it because you look at the jerseys out in the European leagues, and soccer jerseys is another great example. Racing outfits. Nobody wants the jerseys to end up at a point where it's just sponsor after sponsor after sponsor. So I think a lot of fans maybe, knee-jerk reactions can be upset about it. But in the end, I think the Leafs couldn't have done better with that sponsor because there's no clashing with the covers, so it's not like they went and got like a green logo to put on the jersey.
Right on the phone.
Like that wouldn't work. It would make it look like a hat. So I think just the fact that it's literally just the word milk and it's white or blue if it's on the road jersey. I mean, I don't know how anyone can complain about that. Of course, there's always the jokes, and there's going to be endless material this year out of that sponsor. My favorite one, the one that I came up with so far, is when the Leafs get eliminated in Game 7, you can call that crying over spilled milk. So,
puns are
they're already starting. They'll be, and these puns, dare I say, will be milked throughout the year. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The reason I ask, guys, is because recently we came down with a sponsor, Vodka. Some great products, but just a quick ad read from our sponsor, Vodka, for this episode. The Maple Leafs got milky this season, and so should you, all year round, with quality products from Dairy Distillery and premium line of vodka. Vodka. Taking excess lactose, the folks at Dairy Distillery have married artisanal distilling techniques with cutting-edge science to create a clean, smooth product while reducing waste from dairy farmers. The same ones that sponsor our Toronto Maple Leafs. By using milk permate gathered from over 3,500 Ontario dairy farmers and in collaboration with the University of Ottawa, vodka was triple distilled in their Carl Hybrid still to a purity of 96%. Diluted with spring water, Vodka's line of vodka products will bring to life any drink occasion. From their award-winning vodka to their flavored cream liqueurs, Vodka has a drink for every occasion, including their eggnog cream liqueur to spice up your holidays. For more details, head over to dairydistillery.com to purchase your favorite flavors of the Vodka line today. Vodka. It's lactose and gluten-free, but it's the perfect drink for you and me.
You came out swinging with that. The Maple Leafs got milky.
You like that, right?
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for it. It made me laugh.
It kind of fit in with our whole talk there with the puns. Yeah. I mean, you have to start it off with it. Back to the cap, boys. The cap where we are right now with the Leafs, I believe they're sitting at $4. And I saw a tweet from Cap Friendly the other day that there's two teams at $0, and there's the Leafs at $4, and then there's one at like $161. And they were saying how difficult it is to get not only within a couple $100 of the cap, but a couple $100,000 of the cap. The Leafs and Clinton have managed to get within $4 of the cap. Now, you can tie it into the conversation of Malgin versus Robertson because we all agree that Robertson should be starting the year with the big club. Dennis Malgin should also be starting the year with the big club. They had to make a decision, and one of them meant that Robertson goes down because he's waived. Alex, your thoughts on Malgin, Robertson, and the Leafs captain for $4?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks, but it's a business decision, and it's one that is better off for the Leafs in the long run. I mean, the way that I look at it to make myself feel better about it is consider the possibility of the Leafs getting injured at some point throughout the first few games. Had they sent Malgin down and he was claimed on waivers, all of a sudden, where's that forward you're going to call up for an injury? Obviously, there's other guys like Pontus Holmgren now with Steve's. But the way they've got it now, if there's an injury in the season, they can easily call up Nick Robertson. He can go back and forth between the Marlies and the Leafs without having to worry about going through levers. And now they've got both of them to make a contribution to the team this year. And I've always thought that it doesn't send a good message to a prospect when he is clearly the best player in preseason. He was near the top of the NHL in scoring at the end of preseason. And he looked great. You saw a shot on full display. When Austin Matthews says that this shot is the best on the team that he plays on, and I think that means pretty good for us. But it is a business decision, and I don't think that Leafs brass and Sheldon Keefe are stupid enough to think that Robinson can't come up and contribute later on. I think they see what he brings to the team, and I think they know that he's played himself onto the team this year. And he even said in preseason that there's not much else Robinson can do. Like he did everything that the Leafs asked him, and there was an uphill climb for him. You remember we talked to David Alter from Sports Illustrated a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and he the word around training camp and the Leafs coaching staff is that Robertson didn't have that great of a rookie term. And that's a tournament where he's one of the older players there. He should have stood on his head and really, for lack of a better term, he should have made that tournament his pitch. So he didn't do that, obviously. And because of that, we remember what David Alter said, there's an uphill climb for him, and he has to not only play well in preseason, but he has to put himself above the other players who are vying for that spot. And that's what he did. You saw with his production. So I think that he went out and did everything that the Leafs brass asked him to do. And, it came down to the reality that not only the Leafs, but other teams in the NHL are dealing with right now, where they're pressed up against the cap. COVID shutting down the league more or less for 2 years didn't help at all in terms of revenue. We're obviously looking at a big rise in the cap in a couple of years, so hopefully there will be less of situations like these down the line. But I would not be shocked at all to see a forward moved out over the next month or two just to get Robertson back on the team, because at this point, the Leafs are looking for a dynamic top six forward who can slide into that top six. Maybe Dennis Malgin can be that guy. I know you were high on that train.
20 goals by Dennis Malgin this year. No doubt.
I got to come up with something like a dare for myself to do if Malgin outscores Mason Marchment this year. I'll come up with something. Yeah. If he does that, I'll do something. I don't know what yet, but I'll do something.
You're part of the fan base, me not.
No, I don't care. If you don't like that, you're not cheering for the Leafs.
Yeah. 100%.
Either way, I think that the Leafs see where Robertson is in his development, and that he can. There's no harm in bringing him back to the AHL because he's 21 years old. People kind of forget how young he is, but it's obvious at this point that he can make it. So I think that sooner rather than later, Robertson will be back on the team. I don't know who gets shipped out to make room for him, but I can't imagine he's going to be in the AHL.
I'm glad you brought up his age again, because so many times, and even us, we've talked about it, whether this is the make or break year for Nick Robertson. The kid's 21 years old, and I mean the Leafs don't know exactly what they want because they haven't given him that opportunity in a regular role at the NHL level. That being said, Peter, what are your thoughts on Malgin over Robertson, and do we see Robertson come up very shortly? Obviously ending with the cap situation of this team.
Yeah, it was a very difficult situation. I think Nick Robertson knows this is certain. But I just want to throw out a tweet by Kevin Petty who tweeted out AHL goalies ready to probably have to face Nick Robertson again. It's the threat of Riley Matthews going to the Joey Slick and Scarborough, where it's just, this is preposterous, or that's preposterous. So, AHL goalies, good luck. You're going to see a lot of goals from Nick Robertson. But, obviously, I wanted to see him with the team. I really did. I wrote why he was running away with that top six spot. Hindsight, who would see this coming? But you know what? $4 is $4. And the fact that you have the possibility of losing a 20, 40 points fighter than Dennis Malgin this year, who I think is, unfortunately, I think he needs to have a good enough chance to ensure his spot in the top six, and I think he's going to run away with it right now. With Tavares and Nylander, the way that he had chemistry with Nylander especially, I think they're going to do great. But Robertson, the way that he plays, like, man, how can you not do it?
Can we just take a second to reflect on the crispy goal that Malgin scored in the last preseason game? In the words of Austin Matthews, it was a crispy goal. There's not too many other words that really fit the description of that goal perfectly, but crispy does it.
But overall, cap-wise, like, it had to be done. Yeah, you hate to make the waiver exempt, excuse as reasons why, but without this, why would you risk losing Malgin just to keep Robertson in? You can have two terrific, gritty, well, not necessarily gritty, but players that have that work ethic and are smaller but use this side sort of advantage in protecting the puck very well, getting to the middle of the ice. They'll do that exceptionally well. And in the event of an injury, you can rest assured that Robertson's definitely going to be that first thing that comes out of it. As much as I love that team, Bobby McMahon, Travis Douglas, who he's for now, Montes Holmberg, exactly. You have a lot of call-up options, but if you're looking for a constant game, Robertson's going to be your guy. It's unfortunate, given the cap situation, if you do move somebody out, it's great. You lose that. Justin Hollins $2 million, that would definitely help out, and he may give him a couple $100,000 more from Robertson's contract. But yeah, it kind of like the Winston situation. It stinks because he deserved every opportunity. He showed that he could get everywhere with the opportunity. He saw it, the players saw it, everybody saw it. It's just unfortunate.
The easiest way to make sense of this decision is think about it this way. With Robertson in the minors and Morgan on the team, if Morgan were to get hurt tonight, the Leafs can call it Robertson. Had they done it the opposite way and if Robertson got hurt, you can't call it Dennis Morgan because I guarantee you somebody claims him on waivers. Vancouver, Edmonton would claim him on waivers, or Arizona. Yes, apparently they want Stoops.
Or and one may get you upset, but one thing that is that Dennis Morgan doesn't play have the same performance that he did in preseason.
What do you mean?
I force hands over the mic. In that alternate universe kind of thing where we want Dennis Morgan to succeed. But in that alternate universe where maybe he doesn't have the space as an stat he did in camp. Rest assured, Robinson's going to call up because they know that he's going to be a hungry to keep that spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have to remember that those rules are in place to help teams, hold on to their commodities, right? Like, so often now with the cap and how tight it is for a lot of teams because there are players like Matthews, like Tavares, who take up, 10% of your cap. You need to find ways to keep those guys in the draft. Otherwise, what's the point in administering your pipeline just to not have it? Right? So, in that sense, I understand why the rules in place and why they need to send down Robinson. We all talked about, preseason being, what does it mean, right? Is it something that they look at? Obviously, it means nothing because they send him right back.
Nothing.
But it is a money situation and it is a business, and the Leafs need to find a way to get it done and stay within the cap constraints that they have, right? And that decision was, keeping Melvin, keeping it possible 20 goal scorer, and sending Robertson down. I'm gonna feed off of this all year long.
Do it!
20 goals.
10. I'm just imagining a situation where we're at 10 games left in the season and Morgan's at 10 goals, and they're just like, all right, 1 goal per game. Let's go, Dennis.
What would be worse if we had 10 games left, he's at 19 goals and doesn't score for the remaining 10 games?
That would happen.
I was really pissed off with Keeper fan base. 25-year-old Dennis Morgan or is it in the finals for again like
26-year-old Michael Bunting.
Exactly. Then how mad would it be from the other candidates? I'm just picturing that in my mind right now. Where it's just like, oh, here we go again.
Shane Wright loses the Calder Trophy to Dennis Morgan.
You know what made that
years got robbed.
You know what makes that even funnier though is the fact that Dennis Morgan is like in no way qualified.
I'm pretty sure he's already played the game.
Yeah,
right?
he's
If he was.
No, that's what I'm saying. It'd be even funnier if he wasn't eligible for the league games.
They just said, screw it, we're getting into Dennis Morgan. My big thing is, like, their whole issue has been in the middle six. They haven't had the scoring for the playoffs in the middle six. They haven't had the scoring for a year consistently in the middle six. You can argue that they had a great year last year, but obviously, that was a contract year, second half. He played well. So I think the big thing now is just to see what you have in this one. You made the move. You traded Mason Marchment. He had a hell of a year last year in Florida. Now he's off to Dallas, and we'll see what he does in Dallas. But you made that move. You have to see what you have in Dennis Melvin. He's coming back from Switzerland. He wants to play at the NHL level. He worked his tail off to get there. Tore it up in 2 seasons over there. And he played a physical game in the preseason, and that's what they needed. They need a guy, even at his size, come in and play a physical with a physical edge. That's what depth's all about. So if they have that, obviously Robinson, at some point you have to see what you have, and hopefully that's going to be this year. If it is this year, you have to get him into a consistent role. You can't bring him up for 5 games, send him back down, because then you're going to put this kid into a mental press.
Especially if he's going to be in parts.
Yeah,
and imagine what's going to happen in the Giants is
he
comes
over here. Now you have Morgan, Robertson,
Nice. Great problem to have.
Yeah, I could just picture Leafs brass being like, "Hey Nick, buddy, I know that you're like a 1.5 game player in the Marlies. On the Marlies, I know you had a great preseason. I know you've been wasting your season away with the Marlies, but like." Matthew Knies is here, buddy. You want to just marinate in the minors?
He's not 21 yet. He's still very young.
Yeah. It's just like, what else do I have to do? Is Matthew Knies is 6'3". So.
Yeah. Play more physical game like Dennis Morgan.
You know what? Actually, on that note, I will mention that one of the things Sheldon Keefe said that Dennis Morgan, among other players in training camp, had to do to really put himself ahead of the pack was not just play his game, but forecheck hard. Maybe try and use his body a little bit. I know he's a smaller player, but point is he wanted to they wanted Malgin to do more than essentially what he did in his 8-game stint back in 2019-20. And he did that. I don't know if you guys caught it, but in the last preseason game, he like a huge hit in the corner on somebody who's definitely been, I can't remember who it was. But he was throwing the body in preseason. His forechecking game was relentless, and I think that's sort of what's made me come around to Malgin a little bit more. Just the fact that this guy is out here and doing everything possible. He's going out of his comfort zone essentially and stepping into a bit of a different role than maybe he would have expected. And I think he made great work. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can see out of Dennis Malgin this year if he can do that.
You want me to tell you what we're going to see out of him?
I would love to hear it.
20 goals.
How many assists? What do you think he does?
I'd be happy if he put up 20 goals. I'd be happy with 25 assists. And you're talking about maybe 10 primary assists, 15 secondaries.
You don't want him to have the Brandon Fleury special where he scores 20 goals and has 2 assists.
I mean, you got Willie Nylander sniping from his offense. I think that's going to be a big piece in the stats department as well. But I'm also just going to throw this out there. I mentioned this to you earlier before we started, and even yesterday. If Dennis Malgin can be the equivalent to what Arturi Lehkonen was for Colorado last season, I already see him talk like you're playing in a top 6 role. I believe in like one of the preseason games, he's playing alongside the kid. If he's able to run away in the top 6 role like Arturi Lehkonen did and provide that energy and that offense, you don't need to like shop for a middle 6 forward. I mean, that's you already got it.
Even Lehkonen in Montreal,
Yeah.
he was incredibly underrated. I mean, what was the Hall for him? Didn't he get a first round pick?
Justin Barron and I know they gave him Justin Barron and I think his second.
So I mean,
I'll double check the trade, but I know it was Justin Barron and Montreal got away with it.
yeah. So that's what I mean. And I personally think he was super underrated in Montreal. He came to Colorado and obviously he had a great year and a great postseason with him, right? So worth thinking about when we talk about Dennis Malgin, what he could offer to this lineup. Now, we talked a little bit about Calder finalist Michael Bunting.
84-year-old Michael Bunting.
84-year-old Michael Bunting still was eligible for the Calder Trophy. And now we're talking about his next deal because he's on a very team-friendly deal right now. Obviously, it's a proven deal. He's coming out of Arizona with still relatively good numbers. I mean, you talk about his second year. Full year. He played 20 games for Arizona in 2020-21. Had 13 points, 10 goals. Came to Toronto on a very friendly deal. 79 games, 23 goals, 63 points, and as we mentioned, up for the Calder Trophy. Now, this is his final year of the deal. We're talking about what's next for Michael Bunting on a team where he's very constrained when it comes to the cap situation. Obviously, we know in 2025-26 the cap's going to take a major jump. But, Alex, there's been talk about a possible 8-year deal for this guy. Just to clean up the AAV a little bit for him. Is Michael Bunting a guy you want to give an 8-year deal to?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask this question because I am a bigger Michael Bunting fan than most. So bias is kicking in a little bit right here. But I do want him in Toronto long term. I think, and this is something that maybe people overlook in when it comes to players and taking hometown discounts and stuff. I think the fact that Michael Bunting, whenever he's been asked about his contract negotiations, it's always been something to the effect of, I love Toronto. I'm a Toronto boy. I want to be here. And I know that all players say something to the effect of that.
It's home to Austin Matthews as well.
Yeah, it's honest. Yeah, true. It is home to Austin Matthews. They're roommates.
Yeah.
But when you consider Bunting's story about how he's a Scarborough boy, Leafs signed him for less than what he probably could have commanded in free agency last year. And the one thing that stuck out to me as well was the quote that came out today when he said something along the lines of, I would like my agent, my team to start negotiating something mid-season. That's not something that you often see. Most of these guys wait to the offseason to start planning out their next contracts. But the fact that Bunting is already willing to have his contract negotiated, the season hasn't even started yet, like T-minus 2 hours, obviously. But it's just one of those things where when he talks about wanting to be here and wanting to work out the details, when he's already thinking about his next contract and the season hasn't even started, that tells me that he wants to be here. And in my opinion, you're looking at a guy who, I think a lot of it's going to depend on whether or not he can repeat his success from last year. I know you had a take on that as well. I think as long as if he can hit 60 points again and play that role of the pest, get into the middle of the scrums, maybe draw some penalties. He drew a lot of penalties last year, if I recall correctly.
Top 3, I think.
Yeah, he was top 3 in the league. So I think he's a guy that the Leafs should do everything they can to keep. And over 8 years, I think it would be amazing if the Leafs could get him to a similar deal to what Victor Arvidsson got in LA. I know he's not signed for 8 years, I don't think, but Arvidsson's making, I think, $4.5 million per year. And, with Alex Kerfoot's contract being off the books this year, that's $3.5 million you can put towards Bunting. And obviously there's going to be some other players that aren't returning next year. So I think the salary cap the Leafs will be able to make it work with the money that they have. I hope that they can get it done in that range of 3.5 to 4.5, maybe 5 million. I told Peter before we started recording that I'd go as high as 6. And I think that's maybe, like I said, maybe
With
a little
the cap
bit of
going up. You never know.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, the cap is supposed to be going up.
Keyword
Supposed. Yeah. We can't rely on the NHL for things like this. But if the cap goes up and you have the room to make it work, I think Bunting's one of those guys that it would be really nice for the fans, for the marketing purposes, and obviously for the team's purposes to have Bunting there long term. You saw what he did with Matthews and Marner last year. Like a lot of great teams in hockey have had a line. You look at Pittsburgh in their cup runs, they had that Hagelin, Bonino, Kessel, the HBK line. Obviously, you got you had the kid line in Tampa Bay when they made their run to the Cup final. Like Tyler Johnson, Andre Palat, and Kucherov. You've got Boston's top line: Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak. A lot of teams have a line like that, and I think Bunting is, based on last season, I think he did enough to cement himself into a role on that line. But again, a lot of it's going to depend on if he can repeat his success this year.
So you mentioned it. I wrote an article about how he can, repeat his success in his second year with the Leafs. A while back, I also wrote a piece about how Hyman was the 5th role or centerpiece to the core of the Maple Leafs when he was obviously still with the Leafs. Is it a stretch to say that Michael Bunting is now the 5th core piece to that line?
So he's now essentially the next Zach Hyman. I know that's a debate that everyone does not want to get into, but you know what?
I would love to get into it because I got some number crunching here that I will throw your way.
I can confirm you guys, everybody watching right now can't see what's on Forbes' MacBook, but he's got cap friendly pulled up.
Yeah.
So he's about to
Thank you. It is cap friendly.
I just want to say that is an interesting comparison for Victor Arvidsson to Michael Bunting's next contract, because everyone is saying Nick Paul with his $3.15 million contract, which makes sense money-wise, but obviously
Nick Paul's career high in points is 35.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Michael Bunting had a far superior offensive season than Nick Paul. There's no doubt about that. But if Nick Paul Michael Bunting was able to settle on that $3 million, great. But if you're able to get him maybe in that 4.5, like Alex mentioned, that's going to be a steal for 8 years. And even so, even if you think that that's a bit of a risk, considering the last 3 years, that's when he's on his decline or he's out of his prime, that's still a contract that's movable. It's not over 5 or over 6 where you need to retain salary. That's going to be a deal that could pique a team's interest where they need to get to the cap floor if he's on the decline, only if. But the way that he's played right now, the way that he stayed relatively healthy too last season. So if he's able to maintain that, play with that edge, play with that intensity, and I believe we saw him on the power play being that net front presence. But if John Tavares is back and he bumps down to the second, still maintaining that presence in front of the net is going to be huge. And he barely got any power play points last season. Majority of his production was 5-on-5. So if he's able to up that penalty power play time and get producing there, even mid-season, if they still think that 4 or 4.5 is great for Michael Bunting, it's going to be great for both sides. Bunting gets his increase. The Maple Leafs get a cap-friendly deal that tailors to them cap-wise, and you still have money to play with Marner, Matthews when they become free agents. Tavares may take a hometown discount as well because he may not be worth $11 million anymore. So even if you even give him up to 5, who knows what can happen? But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because, a lot of talk was around that Nick Paul kind of deal. Sign him right now before he pops off again for another 60-point season. That way you have him for 3.5 for the next 8 years. That's going to be become even more of a steal, especially in years 3, 4, 5, 6.
I'm really glad that you mentioned the little power play shift that they're doing with Tavares bumping down to the second unit and Bunting on the first, because I think
that's just because of the injury, but if that is the case, then it's still going to be great.
I hope they stick that. I hope they stick that way though, because if you notice, a lot of last season, the Leafs used their power play one unit for like 3/4 of the penalty kill. PP2 would
minute 20.
PP2 would come out and they'd have like the last 30, 40 seconds or whatever to score a goal. But the point is that power play unit number 1 and power play unit number 2 were not getting deployed equally.
Yeah.
So I think that Tavares moving down to the second unit is a really good move for the Leafs if they do that, because the second unit's not going to have Jason Spezza anymore. And Tavares is a guy who I think that with the remaining, I guess you want to call them the remaining characters, I don't know who would round out the second power play unit this year. Maybe Kerfoot, Matt Malgin. Yeah. Kerfoot, Malgin. I think it's good. I think it'd be good for them to have a veteran to sort of keep the power play in check and like make it so that it's not just a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off running around. And Tavares is a guy who we've seen in the past. He never, during most of his tenure with the New York Islanders, he never really played with star players all that often. He was often with a couple of guys who were good for maybe 40, 50 points a year. So it's not like he needs to be on that first unit with Matthews and Martin to produce. You put him in the bumper spot. He's a guy that can shoot still. He can be your guy in front of the net. I think he's better fit on that second unit, and maybe that way the Leafs don't have to put all that extra pressure on the first unit to get something done. They can sort of deploy him a little more equally.
I'm going to throw some numbers at you, and this is strictly for the comparison with Zach Hyman. Michael Bunting, 63 points in 79 games last year, just 7 power play points. Zach Hyman, who's earning 5.5 AAV over the next 6 seasons now, but he signed for 7 seasons in Edmonton. 54 points in 76 games last season, with 15 of those points coming on the power play, playing with McDavid and Draisaitl. So
10 of those points. Sorry, I think that says power play.
Oh, sorry, you're right. 10 points. So that considered, I mean, this is obviously Bunting is a guy that can command $5.5 million. I guess my thinking is, and I've never been a fan of the long-term contracts. I like, you know what, you sign for 2 years, you earn your next contract. Right now, the NHL is so devoted to paying for what you expect them to do.
Yeah.
And if you expect a guy like Bunting to put up 65 points every season, then I guess give him 7 years at $5.5 million. Sure, absolutely. But if Bunting's a guy that could have 2 really good seasons over the next 2 years, maybe 70 points, maybe 75 points, and then he's going to drop off after that second year, then no, I don't want to sign him to 8 years and maybe have a guy that you got to bury at some point or buy out, and then it goes against your cap. Right now, the Leafs have a clear cap when it comes to, bought out players. Mm-hmm. You want to keep it that way, right? So you don't want to sign these long-term deals unless, of course, we're talking about Austin Matthews, which then, give him the bank, drive him over to the TD over here, and just back it right up and give him whatever the heck he wants. Mm-hmm. But Michael Bunting, for me, he's a slot-in player. He's a guy that you slot into that line, and he's going to make that line better. He's going to be the guy that goes into the corners, just the same way a Marchand is in Boston. And that's not to take away anything from Marchand. He plays well, but he's a slot. You can slot somebody else into that spot. They're probably going to have similar success. So, I mean, 8 years kind of a stretch for me, but I wouldn't mind getting something done now. Maybe in the 5-year range, 5-year, $5.5, $6 million. I wouldn't be opposed to that. And then you're not, locking yourself up long term with a guy that has had 1 full season in the NHL.
Yeah, well, like I said before,
it could be a Mattias Samuel situation where you just sign 7 years, $30
the Buffalo
million
special
after 54 games.
The Buffalo special.
Yeah, that is the one thing. I think a lot of what will come of this extension will depend on how he does this year, because you want to prove that this season wasn't just a flash in the pan. But I mean, it's kind of hard to predict him having a down year playing alongside Austin Matthews, who scored 60 goals, and Mitch Marner, who was well on pace for 100 points last year. So I do agree that, if you're giving him $5 to $6 million, somewhere in there, 8 years is a little much, but I would be more than happy locking him up for 8 years if it was like 4 or 4.5. Yeah. Be totally happy with that.
All right, boys, we have a big game tonight with the Leafs in Montreal to take on the Habs.
There's a game?
There is a
What?
game.
Oh, wow.
There's some puck drop
No,
going
I'm
on.
still recovering from the Blue Jays.
I'm still recovering from our first round loss last year, guys.
I'm still recovering from the first day I ever cheered for the Leafs in 2005.
Any Toronto franchise, they let us down continuously. But before we get to a little breakdown of the game tonight, just a quick word from our sponsors here at Indie Ale House. They're our lead sponsor. They're the drink of the podcast. They will be here all season long for you to enjoy a nice beer over at Indie Ale House. Hockey is back, and with it, so are the Maple Leafs. Getting ready for a night out or watching the game at home with the gang? What better way to do it than with a nice cold one from the folks at Indie Ale House in Toronto? With 2 locations in the city, at Italy, Toronto, at Bay and Bloor, and Baroteca location. They have 2 big screens, amazing authentic Italian food, and loads of beer. Also at OG Brew Pub in the Junction at Keele and Dundas with 120 seats, famous bar food, and 12 taps. Indie Ale House is an award-winning brewery featuring their flagship Instigator IPA, which we have right here, and dozens of rotating monthly special release beers. They will have a hockey one coming up in the next coming months. Perfect for takeout, dine-in, or bottle shop online orders when planning for game night. You can find Instigator IPA or Marco Polo Pilsner at finer LCBOs across the province as well. Hashtag Live Indie is the motto. Adventurous, fun-focused beers with a selection for everyone from a healthy dose of in-your-face hoppy beers for the beer geeks to mainstream Pilsners and easy drinking options. Indie Ale House is the go-to for game day.
Just on that note, I will give a shout out and say from personal experience, this Marco Polo Italian Pilsner is very good. I didn't even know which one I grabbed. I just took one of the beers and started drinking. But it tastes good. I'm more of a lager Pilsner guy personally, so this one is mine. Shout out to my mom, who's probably watching right now. She's an IPA fan. So Indie Ale House, Mom, that's your next venture there.
There you go. And you can shop them at www.indiealehouse.com. Like I said, lots of options. They have like cherry sours. They have all kinds of drinks. I'm a guy who's tried over 800 different beers and I've been to 39 different breweries, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, you name it. I've been to some breweries.
You walk into any brewery in Canada and ask if they know Andrew Forbes. They'll be like, oh, yeah. He was in on Thursday.
That's right.
You got a brewery passport too as well? Or
What's that?
You got a passport too for that? Or
Oh, yeah. I do. On my phone, I've got every single one that I've tried. It's in my phone.
He's got like a fast track pass so you can skip the line at the brewery because he's a regular.
Yeah, it's brought to you by Disney as well. No, All right, boys. Tonight, the Leafs and Habs, one of the biggest rivalries in Maple Leafs hockey, going down in Montreal. There's a lot to talk about here. A lot to unfold. I don't even know where to start, really.
Here, I know where to start.
Go
Montreal Canadiens didn't win a single game in preseason. Do what you will with that information.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Alex is convinced right now that with no wins in preseason, as we've seen with Robertson preseason counts, that the Leafs are going to lose tonight, probably 5-0.
No, not 5-0. They're going to lose 2-1 and they're going to outshoot Montreal like 60-20 or something like that.
I'm going to put a different spin on that. Dennis Mulligan, 4-goal game. Lose in overtime, just like Ottawa. Massa Matthews.
This is actually, on this day in 2016 is when Matthews made his debut.
There you go.
And listen,
One-fifth of the way there. 1/5 of the way to the 20-goal mark.
The crispy remark, this being the day, Dennis Mulligan, 4-goal game. Let's see it.
Just to get this out of the way, I am not by any means a pessimistic Leafs fan.
Realistically,
I know what to
you're
expect.
realistic.
I know what to expect from this hockey team, and I know that. I mean, this is the same team that we watched lose to a Zamboni driver. Like that, you can put them out there against a literal ice squad of pylons, and they'd probably find a way to lose.
Why?
So I don't want to speak that into the universe. I know Leafs fans out there will agree with me that this is something that it's an annoying bug in your ear that you can't get rid of. You want to be as optimistic as possible, but at the same time, there's that little thing in the back of your mind saying, hey,
1967.
don't forget who you're cheering for, buddy.
1967.
You're a Leafs fan.
Yeah, I mean, we all
numb to that in 1967.
Oh,
I'm so numb to it.
Well, we all write for the Hockey Writers. It seems to be the key comment on every Leafs piece that we do is 1967. Take it for what you will. It's probably one of the oldest insults to come back our way. But Peter, while I let Alex gather his thoughts about tonight's game, what are your thoughts on the Leafs Montreal puck drop at 7:00?
Again, new season for both teams. One obviously going a different direction. The other, looking still in the rebuilding phase. I mean, Montreal's playing a lot of their top names. You know, Caden Gooley, Arbor Zekai, who had a fantastic camp. I'm really excited to see what he can do. Then again, watching him with Hamilton last season, winning that not Memorial Cup, but that OHL championship, he looked fantastic. And I think he's going to be a big piece for them in the near future. Again, it's all a learning curve for Montreal right now. And I know that I have family who listen to Montreal, so shout out to them. I do expect Montreal to put up a fight this season. Obviously, again, you don't know if they're going to be eyeing for a playoff spot. That's not realistic. They're still going to be at the bottom. Who knows what's going to happen? Stranger things have happened. But with the Maple Leafs, you want to come out with a bang. You want to show that you're the top team. You want to show that the acquisitions that you made are going to be a key factor going this season. We talked about the fourth line of the depth acquisitions. I'm not going to talk about Calle Jarnkrok because I've talked about him nonstop. But Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov, that's going to be the key for them. I mean, it's interesting how, like, when those acquisitions or, like, transactions happen, everyone was already writing off the Maple Leafs. You know, missing out on the playoffs, just making the playoffs. They don't know what's going on. Now you see 3 games, albeit small sample, Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov playing relatively well. Maple Leafs get 920 save percentage Matt Murray and maybe 910 save percentage Ilya Samsonov. Again, you don't know what's going to happen, but if that's best case scenario for the Maple Leafs and you have solid goaltending compared to what we saw with one goaltender getting most of the starts, having that 60-40 balance between the two, I think is going to work out. So if they're going to rely heavily on the Maple Leafs this season, it's going to start with Matt Murray. And I already got a lot of heat for this, saying that Matt Murray, as a bold prediction, can be a Vezina finalist.
People on Twitter don't know what a bold prediction is, dude.
I'm just going to say this right
going
now.
to be a Vezina finalist, too. Didn't you guys hear?
I mean, let's not get into that. But if Murray has the season that he's supposed to have, Maple Leafs are going to go far. They're going to have a strong regular season. They're going to have a strong playoffs. And again, I'm not trying to jump the gun to playoffs right now, but that is going to be best case scenario. So let's see what's going to happen. That's going to be the key for me is the goaltending, and it's going to be the key all season, no matter what.
Alex, your thoughts on tonight's opening game for the Maple Leafs and Habs?
First thought that comes to mind is if you are the type of person that likes to dabble into the gambling world, hammer first NHL goal for Yaroslav Slavkovsky or Arbor Zekai. One of them is happening tonight. I don't care. One of those. Or Jonathan Kovacevic. I don't know if he scored his first NHL goal yet or not, but you can always – I still remember when Nikita Sherbak scored his first goal against the Leafs. I mean, didn't matter in hindsight because he's not in the NHL anymore. But, you know, it's one of those things where you can generally bet on the Leafs allowing a first NHL goal to anyone. But anyways, now that I've gotten that out of the way, the one thing I think the Leafs need to do tonight, if they want to win their season opener, is they can't start slow. Yeah. They cannot. They are a notoriously slow starting team. There have been games in the past, of course, where they've come out flying and they've looked really good. Obviously, Game 1 against Tampa Bay, great example of that. But in the past, they have been known to start slowly, allow an early goal, maybe a couple of goals, and then be like, okay, we got to turn it on. And that's when they turn it on. Excuse me. They need to come out guns blazing tonight. They need to, help. Montreal is a team where I think most of their fans are hoping they finish in last place anyways. This is the Connor Bedard draft year. So,
who's he?
Sorry?
Who's he? Who's he? Exactly, yeah. I don't know him. I don't know him.
No, never heard of Connor Bedard before. You're an Adam Fantilli guy anyways. But either way, Montreal's they're in an obvious rebuilding year, one where there's no expectations for them, especially not in a stacked division like the Atlantic. But doesn't matter how good or bad the Montreal Canadiens are, the one thing you can always bank on them for is wanting to beat the Leafs. So they are going to come out tonight. They're going to be hard on the forecheck. They're going to be doing everything that they can. They don't have the same skill as the Leafs have, so I think it's just one of those things where they absolutely have to. They can't start slow. I don't know how else to word that. They just and they got a game tomorrow night as well. Great way to ensure that you at least split a doubleheader or a back-to-back game is to win the first game. I'm just looking at the chat right now. We haven't been looking at the comments this whole time, have we?
No, this is kind of rolled in the last 10 minutes here, but Mark VDL on Facebook here.
That's my old roommate.
So he's saying if Toronto works as hard as Montreal tonight, they can win 8-0.
That's right. I agree with that, Mark.
Yep.
So there you go, Mark. There you go. He says 35 save shutout for Jake Allen and Cummins. Well, if he
Mark
does,
and I
I've got-
share he's one of my good buddies. We share a very similar brain on
Hey,
things.
if
like
he
this.
does,
So-
I've got Jake Allen in fantasy, so I'll take the 35 save shutout. He also said pale ales are the call tonight, boys. Amber ales are a good call too. Gentlemen, tonight is going to be a big game. And you said it, Alex. They've got to start off hot. If the Leafs come out as they have notoriously started off slow, they're going to be in trouble. This is not the same Montreal Canadiens team from years past. Nick Suzuki's got the C on his jersey now. He's ready to prove himself. Cole Caulfield is a totally different player from last season under Martin St. Louis. Martin St. Louis, he's not about creating plays. He's about letting players play and make the plays. If you're good enough to be in the NHL, you're good enough to make those plays under your own understanding of the game. So with that in mind, the Leafs have to take this game tonight. They have to. They have to start off big.
Sounds
Then
like
you've
a
got
playoff
Sam-
game
I
that
know.
they need to
It's a
win.
it's a must-win
must-win game.
They're
It's
not
game
getting out of the
one.
first round if they don't win
But
tonight.
all
Yeah.
offseason, all you've heard is how we've learned from last season, how we've learned from the previous seasons. That's what we heard the year before. That's what we heard the year before. So they have, and that's why I'm saying you have to start off on a good note. Tomorrow you have Washington. You've got Samsonov going up against his former club. It's going to be an emotional game. Obviously, you want to get this one out of the way. Get the first W out of the way, then you can kind of sit back and relax a little bit and know that you're not going to start the year off 0-2, right? And that would be abysmal. I mean, it's early, but that would be abysmal for the Leafs to start off 0-2.
Oh, 100%. And, you can make an argument that them coming home tomorrow and opening up and Samsonov starting against his old team. And also, I got to make a note right now. It's pronounced Samsonov based on what he said in the video the Leafs posted. So I've been calling him Samsonov all summer. So got to put that to rest. Ilya Samsonov. He's going to be facing off against his old team tomorrow. You can make an argument that they're going to want to put up a good performance in front of their home fans. And Samsonov's obviously going to want to, show his old team that they made a mistake letting him go the way they did. But it's the second half of a back-to-back. So best way you can ensure that this back-to-back isn't a total waste, win tonight against a team that's supposed to be in the bottom three in the league.
Absolutely.
You want to? Mark is setting us up for a bunch of rapid-fire questions here. You want to fire through these real quick?
Sure, absolutely. Let's. So what do we got here? We got. Do you see Bunting stick around 60 points, or will there be a regression?
No regression. I don't know how you take a step back playing alongside Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner.
Yeah, no, I honestly believe he'll be around the 70, 75 point mark, and I think that's going to be a successful year for him.
He won't get 60 points. He'll get 59.
Jeez.
Peter, always got to be different.
40 of those 59 points will be goals.
Exactly.
Will you see 35 plus points from Timothy Liljegren?
Yes.
I'm going to say no just because he's missing the first half or the first month of the season, but I think he'd be on pace for that. I could see him finishing with 30 points.
I think a 30-point season for Liljegren is a success. It's a step forward in the right direction. And
30
remember,
yes,
he's still very early in his development as well. So, how much of a step will Abruzzese take this year?
Ooh. Again, I thought he looked really great in the preseason. Obviously, competition, him, because of the fact that he can play both center and wing, he's got that versatility. But I think right now, the depth that they have, it's going to be tough for him to crack. It's easier going to be for Robertson because there's going to be a top six spot with his name on it. Depth-wise, there are going to be other names like Alex Steves, McMahon, other ones that that may have been quite as equal, but that's just me.
David McSween says he's good with 50 points on a line with Matthews and Marner.
No, I think David's saying that he could put up 50 points on a line with Matthews and Marner.
Depends on how you want to take it, I guess.
Yeah, I that's the way that I'm taking.
Okay, all right.
I think.
David, I'd love to see it sometime.
I can't really disagree. I think I would put up 50 points on a line with Matthews and Marner too. I would just park myself in front of the net, and any loose puck, I'd just be swinging at.
Yep.
Anyways, boys, we're gonna close to closing it out here. As always, we have a little heavy stuff to talk about at the end of this show, and before we do, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna open up a beer here because I always have to drink when I'm talking about this stuff. It's just I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't like talking about it. You guys know my stance on it. The Ian Cole stuff and the Hockey Canada stuff. So Ian Cole obviously is suspended right now from the Tampa Bay Lightning, pending an investigation on some accusations that have come out regarding past sexual assault. I don't really have. To me, that's the right move to suspend him. I hope there is a full-fledged investigation. I hope it's not just the NHL doing it. Aside from that, I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add to that.
Believe victims. That's all I have to
Yeah.
add, really. You know,
Yeah.
I saw some people taking shots at the person who put that tweet out because it came from an anonymous account, and that's just not the right way to be looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean, there seems to be a like a vibe around the people who rush to believe
Jump the gun.
jump the
Yeah.
gun and rush to call out a fake accusation or something like that. And I just think that when you look at how small the percentage is of sexual assault cases that have actually turned out to be proven false accusations versus the amount that probably never came to light because there just wasn't enough evidence to convict, I feel like there's a little bit, not a little bit, I feel like there's a massive gap between those two things right there. And it's just, it's important that the Lightning keep Cole suspended. And obviously when the investigation comes out, I think they'd be best off just cutting him. You know, I hear a lot of things about how that like there are cash grabs. These are victims, like just girls just looking for cash grabs, which I don't understand. Even if you were doing that, why are you picking Ian Cole of all players? And Cole is a guy that you gotta remember as well. This guy was involved in an affair with the rinkside reporter of one of his former teams. I'm just saying it doesn't look good for him, and I truly hope that the people who are involved with this investigation look at it from the victim's point of view. Obviously, it took her 6 years to get the courage to speak up about it, and you see the way that trolls talk about victims online and how it's always about a cash grab or something along the lines of that, and it always makes me sick to my stomach, especially as someone who's got a younger sister. I hope that for once hockey gets it right, and I hope that the investigation, if nothing else, brings justice for the victim, because that's the most important thing here. And whether or not it impacts the Lightning should not be an issue, should not even be a talking point here. I think victim is priority number one, and I hope the NHL and whoever gets hired to investigate this situation takes all the appropriate steps to ensure that there is justice for the victim.
Peter, I'm going to move this along a little bit and just throw you Hockey Canada. Obviously, big news came out that the Scott Smith and the entire board, while Scott Smith was removed as CEO and president and the board stepped down. Your thoughts on the Hockey Canada news?
It took them like 6-7 months to do the right thing. I mean, it also took a number of their top partners and sponsors to pause or withdraw completely everything in order for this to happen. I mean,
Money over right and wrong.
exactly. It's sad that money prioritizes the morality and ethics of doing the right thing. Like, I'm still boggled by that, because this should have happened right when the accusations came out, the hush money funds, the second accusation in 2003. It was just compiling to this point, and it came down to everybody, the hockey community, the prime minister, everybody saying, change now. And big thing was the Bauer one too. World Juniors, TSN, Canadian Tire, all of them had to withdraw. And then now we're going to do the right thing and say that, we want change to happen. Obviously, you want change to happen because they're not getting any money right now. But it needed to be done. I'm just disappointed that it took this long.
I'm gonna kind of counter something you said to open your point and say the right thing hasn't been done yet, because
That's true. Yeah.
there's far too many questions that still will hover over Hockey Canada. How is the new board going to be appointed? Who's going to be doing the appointment?
Yeah.
Were there payoffs for Scott Smith to step down? For board members, was there severance for them to step
Yeah.
down? Follow the money, and that's the thing for me, is that this is far from over.
Yeah.
If you're the provincial branches right now of Hockey Canada, you're not putting your participants' funds back in. If you're Tim Hortons, if you're Canadian Tire, if you're TELUS, if you're any of those sponsors, you're not putting your funding back in until there's a full-fledged investigation as to why this happened.
You
where
see
it
the plan
happened,
that they're doing.
and there's accountability.
Yeah.
There's transparency.
There's been no accountability.
No
so far.
accountability.
Yeah. Like
The board members were allowed to step down. To make them look like they were doing the right thing. Absolutely not. They were not doing anything close to the right thing. And you said it's 6-7 months that this has been going on. It goes far beyond that. It goes back
Years.
to 2003.
Yeah.
It probably goes beyond that. I mean, the second slush fund was opened in 1989. So take that into
That raises
account.
some big questions.
Take that into account. Figure it out. Ask the right questions, and then come back with what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
And then you can start talking about getting funding back to Hockey Canada.
I think, yeah, you know what? It's just one of those things where I think the three of us all came up playing in the Hockey Canada system. We all played hockey growing up.
Yeah.
And, just to think about where our parents' money was going all this time, I think it's a little bit of a reality check for all of us. And it makes me sick to think about it, honestly. So I agree with you guys to the full extent that it is unfortunate that it took this long, but sadly, when you're dealing with big corporations like this, ultimately money is going to be the deciding factor. So
It's sad, but it's a reality.
It is sad, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but I will say that at the very least, I'm grateful that we have gotten to this point.
There's a
Where
start.
There's
There's a start.
It's a start,
Yeah.
and it's a start that should have happened, like you said, 6-7 months ago. But better now than never. I mean, it was just 2-3 weeks ago where Andrea Skinner was saying that she would grade her and her entire board an A, the way they've handled it. And you look back at that and the way that they were talking about themselves and that comment that Andrea Skinner made about who's going to keep the lights on. It's like the lights. It's like
Lights
no.
were going to go off.
Yeah. Oh no. How are we going to play hockey now that Andrea Skinner's not on the board of directors? Like, it's just
Shove it.
Honestly, yeah. Like, I think I'm glad that Hockey Canada the board directors of Hockey Canada have come to their senses. Maybe I don't even think they came to their senses. I think they just saw how much money they were losing and said, okay, this company is going under if we don't step down now. So it's a good start, but I still think the whole foundation needs to be burned down and rebuilt from the ground up.
Yeah.
With the right people in place.
Money over ethics. Money over ethics. Money always over ethics in these situations. Gentlemen, anything else you wanted to throw out there before we close out our episode?
Go Leafs, go. Season kicks off. We're finally here.
Beautiful. As always, guys, we are live tonight, 22 Front Street at the Bottom Line in the Locker Room studio. This is hopefully going to be happening once a month. I believe we came to an agreement here. But it's very nice to sit down with you guys. As always, you can follow Alex on Twitter at @ahobsonmedia. You can follow Peter at @pbarachini. Or you can follow myself at Andrew G. Forbes. You can follow the podcast at Sticks in the Six Pod. That's STIXINTHE 6IXPOD. Or you can just hit us up on any of the streaming services and Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're on it.
Or if you're in the area, we're going to be at Bottom Line throughout the entire game tonight. We're going to be sitting here and watching the Leafs game.
Come down and buy us a drink. We're struggling.
You're only allowed to come here if you buy us a drink.
We're struggling artists.
We'll be here until 10 around then. So if you're in the Toronto area, we'd love to meet you. Come down, say hi, watch some Leafs hockey, and celebrate hockey being back.
Absolutely. With that, guys, we're out here at the Bottom Line, episode 98. Stay with us next week for episode 99.